Hello everyone, I'm your Chinese teacher Helen Liu. Today, we're going to have introduction to Chinese language. When we learn Chinese, why some people call it Mandarin? Mandarin actually is the speaking and pronunciation of Chinese language. In Chinese, we call them 普通话. That means it's an official speaking of Chinese language that everybody can understand each other because China has so many dialects. So it's easy for people to communicate through Mandarin. But in terms of Chinese language, they refer to the Chinese characters. So you're going to ask me how Chinese characters were invented and how many Chinese characters are there, and then how do they invent it, and then how do we learn? So today we're going to cover all of this, the history and then of Chinese language. So Chinese language was invented more than 5,000 years ago with a record. So how Chinese people invented? In the past, the ancient Chinese, they like to observe the nature. And then through observing the nature, they find something that is interesting. Things are related. So, for example, I show you, they see the sun, right? The sun, it looks like the sun like this. And then they invented a character that looks like this. And then nowadays, this is the character of sun. It still looks like the shape of the sun. And then also they observe the moon. When the moon comes every day after the sunset, the moon comes up and the moon is shaped like this. And then they invented a character that's almost like a picogram of the Chinese character, the moon, and then they invented a character, and today the moon still looks like very much like a moon. So you can see that language is very, very artistic because it's actually it's picogram of the nature. And then in terms of some other characters, actually I want to emphasize on the sun and the moon. So the sun calls 日 and the moon is 月. And then Chinese then very smart, they invented a character that then become yin and yang. So basically they say okay, and then it's going to be yin and yang because the sun and the moon, sometimes there are two sides of everything, like the weather. Sometimes it's good weather, sometimes it's bad weather. So but together they figure that everything has positive and negative side. So they start to use the sun and the moon in the character, and then to represent a deeper meaning. So Chinese language is the only surviving Asian languages in the history of the world. The other three are one from Egypt, one from Indian, one from the Middle East. And then now nobody knows about those languages. Those languages are lost. But then Chinese language has 50 to 60,000 of the characters. And then although it was a simplified last century, so 30% of it, but then mostly it's still in the original way of it was invented. So Chinese are still using a language that was invented 5,000 years ago, and then are still using it. And the magic thing is, if you know how to pronounce Chinese character, you can actually, the whole language is computerized. So the Chinese can, you can actually type the pronunciation, and then the Chinese character is going to come out. So that's the magic part of it. And then we're going to also encourage you to study Chinese character because it's so important for you to know the language and the culture deeper through the language. So and I want to introduce you a few other characters that you might be interested. So everybody knows about feng shui, right? So feng is the wind, and then shui is the water. So how the water is invented, and then how the crowd is, how the wind is invented, it's very, very interesting. So Chinese character of wind and water is like this. It's like this. And then you see the water is really looks like how the river is developed. So, so that's feng shui. So I want to use this as example because it's very, very interesting that Chinese pay attention to our connection with the nature. So the wind and the water is the two elements that are relating to how human build up their connection with the environment. So that's why feng shui is also a very, very interesting subject. I want to also show you there is another character that's field. And then field, it looks like that's the field, right? And then, the Chinese actually put another word, which is power, underneath, which is the tool they use to do agriculture. And then that actually this is the character of man. So man, because they are more strong and powerful, they actually work in the field that make them a man. But for women, they invent this character, which is female. And then the female is like a woven machine for them to make clothes, and then this becomes symbol of woman. So this is nan and this is nu. And another concept I want to introduce to you is the 5 elements of the earth. So the Chinese believe that we have 5 elements, and then they are correlated. They are metal, and then they are wood, and they are water, and they are fire, and they are the earth. So this is actually 5 elements of the earth. So they're all correlated. So like the environment, if there is fire, and the water can control this, and then the water can then become the wood can become metal can become soil, and then so it's like it's 5 elements of the earth. It never really means that it never disappear, and then it's just always convert. So that actually explains so much about the environment right now. We need to protect the environment because it's so important for us to live in a harmonious life with each other and then with the world. So Chinese is a very, very interesting language because it's very philosophical. It's very pretty because it's a pictogram. And then it's also has very long history and has deep wisdom associating with the character. So this is a little introduction for Chinese character. Now I want to introduce to you the Chinese phonetics, how to pronounce Chinese. Chinese language is actually very musical. It has 5 tones, actually 4, but then there is a neutral tone. So it's interesting that, it's not so difficult to pronounce Mandarin, which I can introduce you later. But then remember that they have 5 tones. So you have to get the tones right in order for people to understand you. It's like a music. But we're going to introduce that to you later, okay? And then first of all, I want to show you Chinese phonetics is called pinyin. Pinyin literally means you're assembling the sound together. So you have one initial sound and one final sound. You combine together, that become pinyin. So I have this little whiteboard with the initials, and there are 23 initial sounds, which actually borrow the English alphabet in it. So it's actually fairly easy to pronounce. Some are a little off with English, but some are pretty close. So it's pronounced like this: 波、坡、摸、佛、的、特、呢、了、哥、科、呵、鸡、七、西、滋、呲、丝 and 知、吃、诗、日、一、乌. So I think the challenging sound, it's actually ji, qi, xi. Okay, it's a little off, quite off with English pronunciation. Ji, qi, xi. So you need to distinguish them. And then you need to also pay attention to zi, ci, si. This is a little difficult because you have to control the L that you push from your tongue all the way to out to be between of your back of your front teeth. You have to control the flow of it. So the z, you have to block the flow. The c, you have to halfway block the flow. And then the s, you let it go through. That's how you control the sound. Z, c, s. And this zhi, zhi, shi, this is a little difficult even for Chinese because you have to fold the tongue to the middle of the tongue and then fold it both ways. So that's zhi, chi, shi. So we're going to practice more. And then we're going to introduce to you the final sound. So how the final sound works, the basic, they are a, o, e, i, u, yu. 6 of them are the basic. And then they have, some, and then they have some other sound like I, a, in, wen, yu. That's actually the combined sound. And then they have the an, on, en, in. See, those sounds are with the n sound. And then when you see the G sound, that's actually the sound comes from the deep throat. And then when you pronounce, you have to go deep. Like this is an, this is on, yin. So once you have all the sound, and you can make combination, and then like this one, if I have a sound that's u, an, that's one, right? And then if I have the sound like I, yo, I, o, u, right? And then you can make the combination. So with the combination and the basic and the combination, there are 37 of them. So let's practice. So the and now we talk about the tone. Actually, the tone is every sound, like for example, M-A, the sound, the first tone is ma, the second tone is ma, the third is ma, the third tone is ma. So with the ma, you have ma, 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 ma. So you have to know about the tones. So now let's practice. So if you want to say hello, in Chinese is 你好. So it's N-I-H-A-O, 你好. And then when you say 你好, the other people reply 你好. And then when you say thank you, you say 谢谢, X-I-E, fourth tone, 谢谢, 谢谢. And then if you want to say goodbye, in Chinese, that's 再见, Z-A-I-J-I-A-N, 再见. If you want to say sorry, that's 对不起, D-U-I-B-U-Q-I, 对不起. So Hope you, this is a brief introduction of Chinese language. Hope you enjoy learning it. I see you next time.